Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at our latest Mobilizer session. My name is Tashaila Bailey, and I'm the program lead with Canada's Healthy Communities. I'm really excited for our conversation focused around how community leaders can create healthy cities. We have an exciting discussion, presentation, and panel lined up for you all today. And before we jump any further, I first would like to just mention a couple tech pieces. For anybody listening in or who would like to listen in on the French channel, we do have live interpretation throughout, and you're able to access that by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. For anybody that would like closed captions enabled, please click on the CC also at the bottom of the screen. While folks are waiting in or just logging into Zoom to get the space warmed up and started, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, share where you're joining us from as well. I myself are joining you just outside of Toronto on the traditional lands of the First Nation peoples, which includes the Haudenosaunee, Wendat, and Métis peoples, and what is known as Newmarket, Ontario. And one thing that we would like to emphasize is that we recognize the land as an act of reconciliation and the setting for all of our work. Our collective placemaking and community building takes place on traditional and in many cases unceded territory of Indigenous peoples. At this time, I would like to invite my colleague Yam from CFC to share a few remarks as well. Hi, Yam. I believe you're just on mute.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Jiya Benni. I am a program coordinator at Community Foundations of Canada, and I work specifically for the Healthy Communities Initiative, mostly on the back end of things, supporting projects and recipients, anywhere from admin work to helping navigate project changes and helping projects get to that finish line. And I am based in the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. And I'm very happy to be here and to hear from our panelists and all of you in regards to this very interesting topic. And I also want to thank the amazing team over at CUI for facilitating sessions like these. Thank you.
Thank you, Yam. At this time, I'd also like to welcome our special guests that are joining us throughout the session. We're joined by Jiya from 880 Cities. We also have Mickey joining us from Denman Island, as well as Avery joining us from the Godrich community. Also on the call, we had Patricia, who is going to be our graphic facilitator. I'll add that highlight there. You will see Patricia's graphics throughout the session, highlighted or spotlighted on the screen, just capturing in a visual way some of the key themes and topics that are going to be discussed throughout today. Without further notice, I would like to turn things over to Jiya Benni, joining us from 880 Cities, to lead us in the first half of our session with a presentation. Welcome, Jiya.
Thank you so much, Tashaila. Hi, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Awesome. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. So welcome to our session today titled How Can Community Leaders Create Healthy Cities? In today's session, we are going to put the spotlight on community leaders and organizations like yours and how you are already creating healthy cities or can create healthy cities. And to introduce myself, my name is Jiya Benni. I am a project manager at 880 Cities. 880 Cities is a nonprofit based in Toronto, and we are guided by a very simple concept of what if everything we did in our cities was great for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old? That is a question that has defined our organization for the 18 years of our existence, and that is a question that we always start with when we work with cities. It is a powerful starting point, but our work is also shaped by how it intersects with race, gender, sexuality, and class. We've been around for 18 years. We worked around in more than 350 cities and over 5 continents. Our mission is to ignite action and challenge the status quo to create healthier, more equitable, and sustainable cities for all people. And ours is a vision of healthy, happy, and sustainable cities for people to grow up and grow old in, where all people have the right to safe and active mobility, welcoming and accessible public spaces, and inclusive city building processes. And when we work on cities, we believe in these 3 rights. That is right to public space, right to mobility, and right to participate. And by right to public space, we mean every resident has the right to accessible, high quality, and dynamic parks and public spaces. By right to mobility, we mean every resident has the right to safe, accessible, and comfortable sidewalks, bike lanes, and public transit systems. And right to participate means every resident has the right to participate in the city building processes. But we also believe that we have a responsibility to the land and each other. Which brings us to today's topic of how can community leaders create healthy cities. At ATT Cities, we work a lot with city staff and decision makers, but in this session, we want to put the spotlight on what grassroots change makers and organizations are doing and can do. How can you create impact and change from outside the system with little investment and resources? So I hope today's discussion will, inspire you to do that. Let's start off the discussion by defining what a healthy city is. In your opinion, how would you define a healthy city? If you could pop it in the chat, we could get started on that. Great, so I am here seeing one that is walkable, strong engagement, housing for all, walkable, green, pedestrian friendly, safe and active, safety and social cohesion, connected. Everyone feels safe, strong housing, where everyone has the opportunity to flourish. Amazing. Thanks, everyone. So this is, it aligns with a lot of what we also think. At ATT Cities, we are inspired by WHO's definition of healthy city, which is a healthy city is defined by a process, not an outcome. It is one that continually creates and improves its physical and social environments and expands the community resources that enable people to mutually support each other in performing all the functions of life and developing to their maximum potential. And this connects with our ethos as an organization that is always striving to foster positive change in cities and communities. So all what you said, and also, making it a commitment to constantly improving and committing to a process. So there is no one ideal healthy city. A healthy city is one that has made a commitment to population health and has invested in a process that can monitor progress on its healthy city goals. So as a community organization, where do you start? And when you start a program or a project, what steps could you put in place that can build in a robust process and commitment to creating a healthy city? I hope the steps that we will elaborate on will encourage you to think of your projects and programs as a process. So I have 5 points for you. 1 is take an asset-based approach. 2 is base placemaking on the need to advance equity. 3 is engage community at all levels. 4 is test out community ideas and gather feedback. And 5 is strategize. So 1, take an asset-based approach. Whenever you start a project, start with your community assets. Our communities have different types of assets, and it is always worth your while to work with existing assets than creating new ones. And these can be physical, institutional, community, cultural, and even stories. So this is a picture from the Thunder Bay Open Streets we did in 2014 with Eco Superior in Thunder Bay. And we literally utilized the physical asset of streets and activated the street using existing assets like local businesses and cultural assets like dance groups. And if you need a tool to think about your assets in your community, something like this could help you. So before you start your projects, sit down and think of the assets in your community. These are the building blocks of your project, like the location and what partners you will collaborate with. This would make your project a more collective effort. And when you have made good relationships, there is motivation to continue the collaboration and keep the process going. My second point was base placemaking on the need to advance equity. As community organizations, you are all placemakers, and community is at the core of what you do already. Placemaking transforms public spaces, keeping the community at the core. So when you do your placemaking projects, ask who it serves, which groups are being impacted by your work. Are you hearing their voices? Do certain groups have barriers to accessing and enjoying the vibrant community life you're striving to build? If so, how will you address that? This is a photo from a pop-up park we did in Kitchener, Ontario, where we had a sacred fire with a firekeeper. And this provided a welcoming space for Indigenous folks and a place for settlers to listen, learn, and relax. Which brings us to the crucial step of engaging the community. And we mean engaging the community at all levels. And this includes across ages, incomes, classes, races, ability, etc. Because when you want to create long-lasting change, and when you're committing yourself to creating a healthy city, we need to continuously involve those who know their community well, and that is the people in the community. And engagement of this sort means you go to where people are, not expect them to come to you, being inclusive and mindful of the different barriers that people have with engagement, valuing their time, and making it fun and worth their while. The next point I have is test out community ideas and gather feedback. So once you hear from the community on ideas and those kind of things, test it out. It doesn't have to be a big production. It can be simple interventions, what we call lighter, quicker, cheaper, using materials that are lighter, quicker to mobilize, and cheaper to fabricate or make, but that are high impact and high visibility in order to make impactful placekeeping. And when you do these events, remember to collect data, because this feedback or data is going to help build the story for future funding and to keep your process going, to go back to WHO's definition and what we think of when we think of healthy cities. This particular photo is from Brampton, where we engaged the community and then did a pop transformation based on their feedback. Or based on their input, and then collected feedback, which led to create some recommendations to the city to create a long-term strategy. So which brings to my last point, which is strategize. So when you have engaged a community and have tested out ideas and have feedback from them, then you have the makings of a strategic plan. The event you planned and implemented is no longer a one-off event, and it becomes part of a broader strategy to improve your community. So those are my big 5 points. I also wanted to highlight these small examples from a program we run. But so at 880, our mission is to challenge the status quo and engage change makers at all levels. This includes mayors, city staff, councillors, but also grassroots change makers. A lot of times we focus on people in high-level positions, but long-lasting change happens at all levels. So I wanted to highlight these 3 change makers who are creating impact from outside the system with limited resources and contributing to a healthy city. These are change makers from a program we run at 880 cities called Ontario Community Changemakers. It's a leadership program and microgrant program for people with bold ideas to activate public space, enhance civic engagement, and foster social inclusion in their communities. The program is actually open now for application. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to apply. So this is Nitharsan, a data analyst and photographer. His project is called It's Nearby. The project created an online photo map with archival photos of parks in Scarborough in Toronto. It also had an augmented reality component to the project where park goers would be able to use their mobile device and see a historical photo overlaid onto its present location. So it builds on physical and digital assets already in the community and encourages people to learn a bit more of the parks around them. Next, I wanted to highlight Noelle, a transgender activist and social service work student in Peterborough who started Mending Communities. Her idea was to take donated clothes, which cannot be used, teaching community members on how to repair them and redonate them to local organizations who are running on low supply. So she was building on assets such as the community members skilled in sewing and repairing, used clothes, and contributing to a circular economy. We also have Avery from the same cohort of Changemakers, and we will speak with Avery later. This is Samantha Loney, who is a Métis filmmaker and podcaster from Barrie, Ontario. Traveling Métis is a podcast made by Métis youth for Métis youth. The podcast hopes to spread knowledge of Métis culture in a fun, engaging way. And the podcast travels around Ontario to teach and share stories of what it means to be Métis, because she, in her work, found out that there was a need for Métis youth to have a voice, and through her podcast, she was doing that. So I wanted to leave you with these examples of change makers who have created, who are creating impact in their communities with their quote unquote small projects, but highly impactful projects. And they are creating and improving their communities' physical and social environments and expanding their community resources that enable people to mutually support each other in performing all the functions of life and developing them to their maximum potential. So if you thought of healthy cities as, if you had one idea of healthy cities, I hope this small discussion or presentation helped you change your mindset a little bit about what a healthy city is. It is more about the process and the commitment to creating change. There is no small project that, no project is small in terms of a healthy city. And as community organizations and leaders, you know what the community needs, and you're well positioned to create that change in your community. With that, I'm going to stop sharing. And I will call on Avery and Nikki to join the panel discussion. Hi, Avery. Hi, Nikki. Yes, I can see you both. Amazing. Okay. So let's start with an introduction from both of you. If you could introduce yourself and what project you're currently involved with, we can start from there. Nikki, do you want to go first?
Well, I don't, but I will. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. My name is Mickey Fox. I'm the program coordinator for an organization here on Denman Island. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge our land here. Denman Island is the traditional unceded territory of the Pentlatch people, including Comox, Sleamon, and Qualicum First Nations. I'm really honored and privileged to be able to live here. And the main project that we're working on is right behind me. It's called the Covered Recreation Space, that came out of an initiative that COVID instigated for us to have safe community places to gather. And that is the project that we are working on. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Mickey. Avery, over to you.
Hi, I'm Avery Baker Greaves. I am in Goderich, Ontario, which is along Huron, Lake Huron. I am the founder of Goderich Free Little Pantry. Like Jiya said, I was fortunately one of the 2022 recipients of the Ontario Changemakers grant. And we are on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples.
Thank you. And what would you say is a healthy city or a community according to you? Avery, this time we can start with you.
So I come at this from a rural perspective. I have lived rurally my entire life. I previously lived in a community of 1,200, and then 2 years ago moved to the Goderich community, which is about 8,000. Goderich is an hour and a half from London, Ontario, the biggest urban setting. And so, from my perspective, a healthy community is one that has all of the necessities, medical, social, physical, that someone needs in order to maintain their well-being. So community members shouldn't have to travel outside of their community to meet these needs. And I would say that Goderich is quite fortunate. We have one of the only hospitals in our municipality that's open 24/7. We have a wide range of clothing stores and shoe stores. And yeah, like I thought previously living in Lucan, 15 minutes from London, when we moved to Goderich, I assumed I would be in London all of the time, driving the hour and a half. And we almost never drive to the city anymore because Goderich is so self-sufficient. Um, and even us being fortunate to have access to vehicles, my husband was going through some health concerns the last couple months, and it looked like we would have to drive him to a neighboring community to see a specialist an hour away. They actually brought the specialist to us. We had the ability to drive there, but like I said, we were very fortunate. And the fact that the hospital systems and the medical systems are willing to do that for people, I just don't think we would get the same level of care in a larger space. And that's so, so, so important. Because Goderich sits on the world's largest salt mine, if you're not familiar with it. And it's a very well-to-do employer. But despite that, there is a lot of unhousedness, homelessness, a lot of people struggling in the communities. So, like I said, like you on the one hand have a lot of retirees or people who work at the mines, but on the other hand, you have a lot of working class people or people who can't even work right now because they can't get jobs.
Thanks, Avery. Yeah, like self-sufficiency in terms of well-being, like you having all the infrastructure, that you need for making sure that you and your family are taken care of, and emergency services and those kind of things. Very valid points. Mickey, what in your opinion is a healthy community?
All right, thank you so much. I really love what your organization is doing, Jiya. That's fantastic. I really appreciate that kind of level of perspective on what creates a healthy city. So we are not a city. We are like literally the opposite of a city. We're completely surrounded by water. It's a 10-minute ferry, and the ferry only runs till 11 p.m. at the very latest on a Friday night in the summertime. So we are an isolated rural community. And as such, this community, for as long as I've been here, has stepped outside of the traditional resources and come together as a community through many, many, many different experiences that community members here have. I lived in a large city for probably 25 years, and it's a very different experience living here, just simply because we bump into each other more often, more frequently in different situations within this community. To me, a healthy city or community is an interconnected web of relationships between people and the land, and between people and resources. Much like what Ashley had to say about resource disparity, we do experience that here. There is not one major employer. Many people go off island to work, but there is a deep base of service providers like house cleaners and farm workers and carpenters and people that do service work that serve the people who move here with larger resource bases to purchase the larger homes that are more on the luxury scale. So we do have a lot of wealth disparity on Denman Island. That said, there is a lot of sharing of resources on Denman Island, and to me that has the most impact on the wellness of the people that live here, is actually having relationships with each other and having compassion and connectedness when someone is not able to either create their own resources or access their own resources. There's quite a long-standing commitment to community wellness through sharing resources here. So that to me is what I think.
Thanks, Mickey. That's a very powerful way of putting it. And maybe it's because I'm a new parent, but I'm thinking it's having that village with you. It's that village that is.
It is critical. And we work with the 8 to 80. I love that. Where can you grow up and grow old, supported, connected for your entire lives? I think we miss that so much in our modern colonized culture, and coming back to that is just a wonderful experience.
Thank you. And through your projects, could you elaborate on your projects and also how you are contributing to your communities and your healthy communities?
So Godrich Free Little Pantry are three little food pantries that are situated across walkable areas in the Godrich community. So they're akin to a free little library. I know that the Toronto area has, oh gosh, a few hundred of these. They haven't made their way west to that degree. I know London has maybe five or six. So like I said, three little food pantries equivalent to a little library. We have two located in the downtown square and then one kitty corner to our two public schools and high schools. So anyone in the community is able to contribute to these pantries, while anyone in the community is able to take from them as well. Um, W so Goderich, like I said, there's a lot of wealth disparity, and we're very fortunate, though, that we have 2 food banks, but the biggest issue is we have 2 food banks, but that there's not equitable access to them. Um, our 2 food banks are located on the same street at the south end of town, and from the downtown core, it's 3 kilometers each way, and that's not counting if you live in the northern part of town. So a lot of the people who we have spoken to who utilize the little pantries is because they don't have transportation. They have mobility issues, whether they're using a scooter or crutches or canes because they're waiting on that hip transplant. They're waiting on that knee replacement. Or they had a really bad experience. Maybe 15 years ago, they were dealing with Patty at the food bank, and Patty was mean and judgmental. And Patty quit 7 years ago. But because of that one bad experience, they don't know that she's left. They don't want to use that service anymore. So the food boxes are, like I said, anyone can use them without judgment. We did put them in walkable public areas, but there is a degree of privacy to each of them. There are no houses right located towards any of them. So no one's sitting on their front porch being like, "Oh, there goes Dave again at the food pantry." Um, so like I said, anyone can use them without judgment. And a lot of people, for instance, they will use them under the cover of darkness. Um, and it's been a great program as well because it is getting like the 8-year-olds and the 80-year-olds involved. Whenever we do a school presentation about them, I will see kids at the grocery store later on that day, a week or two later, and they'll be like, "Look what we're buying." And they'll get so excited to be able to have that little positive impact in being able to participate.
That's amazing. Thanks, Avery. It's great to hear about the impact on kids as well. Yeah. Mickey, could you elaborate on your project a bit more and how it contributes to a healthy community?
Sure. We have a number of projects in our organization, but the one that I spoke with Tashaila about is that back there, the covered recreation space. And the purpose of the covered recreation space came out of COVID. We needed a safe place to gather because we live in a rainforest. We need protection from the rain. We also need protection from the sun in the summertime. So it's huge. I think it's like 40 by 80 feet. It's big. I don't know the exact parameters of it. It's really well constructed. We're partway through the construction, so this is a continuous process. But the intent of the covered rec space is to have a space where people of all ages, all abilities, regardless of identity, socioeconomic status, any of that stuff, can come here and participate in recreational, social, and community building activities. What we are doing in our organization is liaising with other organizations in our community that are also serving people just in a different way. So for example, we have collaborated with an agency called Farm to Family that takes locally grown food, creates it into meals, and then shares that at low or no cost with local families. So we are planning to have intergenerational meals here. So with our people that serve our seniors in the community, they're joining with us. So we're going to be planning for that. We are also working with our local reconciliation group for Indigenous practices and creating more, like having more, way more Indigenous ways of being in community woven into how we do things. And I don't know how to do that, but we have some wonderful people here who do and are guiding us in that process. So really, I think the way that we are doing it with this project, I mean, it's a gorgeous thing and it's going to be really great, but it is about bringing people together who might not necessarily be together, but through that relational engagement, when the food bank comes up, for example, and we need a donation or we're looking for donations, people who may not necessarily need it or have that experience can relate to, oh, I remember Sarah and her kids and how right now they're struggling, and oh, you know, here's a check for $200. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing is what I'm hoping to create through relational activities that are fun and meaningful and that meet the needs of the all across all the ages. So that's what we're doing here.
Thank you, Mickey. Really goes back to the asset-based approach, where thinking about all the community assets you have, building those relationships and making it a collective effort. Yeah, thank you. And when you've been doing this, so just for my next question, what has been your top challenge in implementing this project?
With us, it's been the disconnect between the Goddard Free Little Pantry Executive Committee and the general public. At times, the general public feels that we're not doing enough or we're moving too slowly, but they're unaware of the fact that there is so much going on behind the scenes. When I first got this project up and running, just the planning process took me about 150 hours because I had to speak to lawyers, I had to get my food and health safety certificate. I had to appeal to the town of Goderich because they were very, very supportive and they allowed us to place the pantries on their project. We had to get insurance. So there is so much going on behind the scenes and it takes time. So while it may look like we're not doing anything, the public doesn't understand that there's so much happening. A recent case happened about a month and a half ago. Unfortunately, the pantries have experienced a number of cases of vandalism. Most of the vandalism has been able to be fixed in a very short time frame, 24 to 48 hours. Unfortunately, this most recent case of vandalism destroyed a pantry entirely. And so we were looking at a solution, making a metal-based box rather than a wood-based one, just for it to live longer. And, you know, in the 2 weeks that we were going through that process, somebody in the community very generously placed a kitchen cupboard on top of the post. Um, Unfortunately, we had to take it down because it didn't meet the insurance. It didn't meet the approved design of the town. It was animals could get in it. And the community was very, very upset with that because they thought that we were not grateful to that person. We were extremely grateful, but they didn't understand that we have so many parameters and standards that we have to uphold, and it just didn't meet those. So, with us, especially as of late, the biggest struggle has been that disconnect. But we've always been very transparent about what we're doing. So if you were to look on our Facebook page from 2 or 3 days ago, we outlined, hey guys, we know you're upset, but here are all the reasons why.
Thanks, Avery. I'm sorry to hear about the vandalism, but yeah, that is that there is that tension where, you know, people think you're not doing enough, but you are actually doing so much. And I think a lot of people in this call can relate to that. Mickey, have you had similar experiences or have you had other challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Avery. I love your project. That's so great. That's really fantastic. That's awesome to have that in your community and all the thought that's gone into it and all the maintenance of that. So props to you. Communication, I think, is our greatest challenge, not only with our community, but even within our organization. As we grow and develop and we have more resources and we have more things to manage, we are losing that really critical interconnectedness of communication. And we're working diligently to bring that back from our council to our staff and end user people that share in these resources that we have. So the communication has been really critical on this project. As you can see, it's enormous and it requires a significant amount of planning and funding. This is a long-term project. This has actually been in kind of the minds of people since 1996. And we just started construction in 2023. And we were supposed to be done in December, but it's not happening. So I think the most critical point for us in where we are having the most learning is in our communication. How are we communicating with each other within our organization? Who's going to do what, when, why? How do we report back for that? And then communicating with our community, first of all. And I think the organization did a really good job of this before I came on the scene, was gathering information and input from the community. And what do we want? And how do we want it to look? And who's going to use it? And why are we going to use it? And gathered all that data to come up with this design. In the implementation of building this, prices have skyrocketed in terms of building materials, especially lumber and labor. And it's been, you know, we're not where we wanted to be. So there's a significant amount of disappointment. Not only we're feeling it, but our community is feeling it. Like, hey, we were supposed to have this ready for weddings this summer for people to be able to rent it. So the communication within the organization, understanding our why are we doing this? And like making a commitment to that, like making that commitment to that why and really believing it. Because if you don't believe in it, it's going to die, in my experience. So believing in that, carrying that on, who is involved, who are the critical people. And if someone is unable to step up or show up in the way that they originally planned, to fill in that gap ASAP, as soon as possible, because we've lost so much momentum with changes in people that are organizing this project. And then how are we doing it? And at each level, not only communicating that within our organization, but out to the community, and then graciously receiving the feedback that we get, and you know, taking out that like, you don't think I'm doing enough, to like, what is the actual feedback? What do people actually need? What is the need here that is not being met in my community? And how can we respond to that and give them the information required so that they can feel, or at least have understanding of where we're at. So definitely communication.
Yeah, communication is a key piece in a lot of the projects we do, and it almost feels like there isn't enough. You can't communicate enough. Like it's communicate. Yeah. Amazing. And do you have any tips, both of you, for other placemakers who are currently implementing their projects? Who wants to go first? Avery, yeah.
Mine would be, don't try to do everything yourself. At the onset of Goddard Free Little Pantry, I was. So I think we were in Toronto in August of 2022, and that month I just took off. Once I got home, 150 hours in about a month's time, on top of my full-time job, on top of my family. Um, so I was doing everything from August until December. And that was, like I said, appealing to Goderich Council. That was restocking all three pantries on a regular basis, grocery shopping, sorting the food items. And then at Christmas time, we were very fortunate, but we had so many food drives donate to us. One food drive alone gave us 6 massive tote boxes. It took me from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. one day, no break, to sort through all of that. At Christmas time, I said to my now husband, I can't do this anymore by myself. So we created the executive committee, and there was initially probably about 16 people on that committee. And it was just mind blowing to me that at the time, prior to that, I was taking on the role of what 16 people were then doing. Um, and so, we'd have people dedicated to social media, 2 carpenters, delivery people. And even in the managerial role, I still found that I was taking on too much, because we would come up with tasks at meetings and who would like to do this task? And there might be crickets, and I can't have silence. So I would be like, well, I'll do that. Well, I'll do that. So I was still taking on far too much. So again, it was a matter of writing down all the roles that I was taking on in that one role, And again, seeing it was about 34 regular tasks I was doing, and then again redistributing that out. You can't help anyone if you can't help yourself, if you burn out and all of that. So very much don't do everything yourself. And then the second piece I would say, which makes prior to starting the whole planning process, I sat down with some folks in the Goderich community who I knew would probably utilize the pantries, especially our unhoused population. And it was eye-opening, some of the things that I was learning from them. Um, and I would never have thought of that on my own. Um, because again, I'm from a privileged place. So that was very, very worthwhile for our project.
Thanks, Avery. That's two nice tips, like one on a personal side about, delegate. And when you sit down and write, you were doing like 34 tasks, you said, like 34 roles probably, like fitted into one person. So, and on the project side, like sitting with the community and like really understanding the gap and the need. Yes, thank you. Mickey, how about you? What are your top tips for other placemakers?
Thanks. I relate so much, Avery. I relate so much. Yeah, so sharing the energy. I have so much excitement for community and building community that if I share that excitement and energy, other people will catch it. So sharing that energy, which then helps to share the load and the commitment. So that's been very good for me. Asking for help. Woo! That is a big one culturally for me to step out of that. I can do it. I can do it. I'll do it. I can do it. I can do it. Till burnout. And so asking for help has been really, really beneficial for me personally and for the project. Like super beneficial. Checking in often with the people that you're working with, checking in often, just like a text message or a quick message, and gratitude, appreciation, sharing appreciation for the people who are putting in the effort, who are showing up, who are championing, who are, right? And that focuses on the asset, right? That asset of the contributing energy. And acknowledging, I wrote down like acknowledging the yuck. Like our yuck is we have cost overruns that we did not predict, that even with our best diligent, attention, we did not predict that. So we have to acknowledge that yuck and our feelings about it with our community, because they are also feeling it's a yuck and they have feelings about it. So acknowledging that part is also creates more understanding and understanding and compassion for the people that are showing up to do this. And that's been really, really beneficial for our project.
Thanks, Mickey. Lots of acceptance and yeah, sharing the joy. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And okay, now my next question is has there been a project or even, well, is your current project the ones that we are talking about, or has there been another project that has been inspired by like a policy at the municipal level, or something that, that was triggered by something that was set out at a higher level?
So in 2017, we really started to notice unhousedness in Goderich. My career is actually as a librarian here in the community, so I am seeing all demographics day in and day out. So 2017, we started to have 3 or 4 gentlemen regularly coming into the library from open until close, sleeping in the library all day long. And they would do that all winter long, and they would do that well into the spring. They would go outside for the summer months a lot, have encampments in some nearby forests, and then we'd see them again in the fall. So this was very new to the Goderich community, and nobody knew what to do, and there was a lot of not in my backyard mentality. So seeing this in the community, the United Way was like, we need to do something about this. So they created a Goddard Community Committee, which had a representative from each of like the largest organizations in the community. So I was there on behalf of the library, somebody was there on behalf of the medical center, some of the service groups, and the mayor was the chair of that committee. And so at that time, it was trying to determine two of the largest social issues facing the Goddard community and then how we might resolve those. So I was a part of that committee for a year or two, so it was identifying homelessness and social isolation as being the two big issues, and then fundraising to help tackle those. So I was first introduced to the idea of the free little pantries during that time. Um, and so it wasn't per se municipal, but there were municipal players involved. And then in 2022, when I saw the OCC opportunity, I applied for that. And we do have municipal support and involvement nowadays. And the municipality is always, and I should say, like, the pantries are not just for the unhoused folks. We have everybody using them, but they were the initial inspiration. In the last year or two, the municipality, for instance, has joined together with all the other municipalities um in the county to erect a not emergency preparedness, but an organization of that sort so they can discuss issues like food scarcity and homelessness and how they can tackle those.
Great. So there's definitely like synergy and this alignment with what you're doing and what the city is doing or the municipality is doing. Mickey, how about in Denman Island?
Hi, we're such a unique community here. The Gulf Islands are very unique. We are part of what's called the Comox Valley Regional District, so that's our municipality. And they have been supportive of this project. And as I mentioned earlier, it was out of the need for safe community spaces where people could gather because people were experiencing a significant impact as a result of not being able to gather and be together. So that was a big part of our initiation for this project. So that's like even higher level, I think, than municipality. And our municipality really supports this project. We have a relationship with them. We present at some of their funding meetings. We apply for particular grants that would that our project meets the parameters of. So yeah, it's really interesting because the Comox Valley Regional District is 3 cities, like 2 cities and a town, and we're a very different type of community in their thing. We also have other community organizations that are funded through the Comox Valley Regional District to be the administrators of funding and other resources. So we do connect with them as well, and they are supporters and contribute in funding and just social support for our projects as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Mickey. And thank you, Avery, for sharing all your insights and for answering all my questions. Mickey, there's someone on the chat, Sandy, who was asking if you could share their email or LinkedIn if they're interested to connect with you. So I think we can go over to the Q&A from the audience if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Jiya, Mickey, and Avery for what has been shared so far. I was in my zone just listening in to all the stories that were told, and it reminds me so much of how applicable healthy cities, or this concept that Jiya shared on behalf of 880 cities, can really be applied to such diverse communities, going from smaller regions to even an island. There was a lot of questions that came up before the session around how this concept could be applied to smaller towns and even villages. And through the stories that have been shared, I hope so far everybody has been able to make those connections and see how these pieces can be adapted or applied in their own communities as well. To kick us off with the Q&A from the audience end, there was one question that came up today, and I'm thinking this could also be asked of participants joining us as well. So feel free to drop your responses to this question in the chat. Verbatim, the question was, any chance there is anything here that would also show the difference between planning and other activities like engagements shifting to co-creation? So in summary, are there any examples, if I'm capturing this correctly, are there any examples of co-creation when it comes to creating healthy communities? Again, those joining us in the chat, please feel free to share any relevant stories or projects that are happening in your community. If there's any links that come up that you would like to share with the rest of us, please drop it there as well. And for our panelists, I think there was already a few examples of co-creation that were shared. But if there's anything else that you'd like to touch on around this topic, please feel free. And I'll drop the question in the chat. Any examples of co-creation in your community?
We're actually working on something right now. We're making a mobile little pantry. So any group, any organization in the community, it might be a youth group who says, "Hey, we're having an event on such and such a day. Can you fill the little pantry with some snacks for some youth?" And then they will utilize that. So we're going to get that up and running very shortly. So that's kind of an opportunity for other levels of engagement. And I mentioned about the school visits, for instance. Another thing that we do is um, we will, on a quarterly basis, put a call out to the community, and everyone is welcome to join us, and we will fill lunch bags. We will spend an hour and make 150 lunch bags, which then will be utilized in the pantries for throughout the next couple of months.
Thank you so much, Avery, and so glad to hear even the engagement across youth. I think that comes up in a lot of questions around youth involvement comes up in a lot of our other spaces as well. So it's great to hear that tapping into schools has been one way that you were able to bring in that community.
I think in
Yeah.
your promotions, if you really highlight that they can get volunteer hours, that really helps.
I love it.
I agree. We also use that as an incentive, the volunteer hours. I wanted to add so that we think of co-creation in different ways. Like there is co-creating with the community for the vision of the project. So, like lots of community engagement to get that, to co-create that vision. But also like actual physical transformation of places. Getting the community also involved in, actually painting the laneways, or putting out the chairs and benches and plants and all of those. So there is it creates ownership, and every that community member who wanted to put their kitchen cupboard, it's actually ownership, and that comes from co-creation. It comes from that shared approach to building these things.
Thank you so much, Jiya. Any thoughts on your end, Mickey?
Yeah, just real quick. This space that I'm in right here. We call it the hub. And this artwork that's all over the walls that you can see was co-created in our community with everyone who wanted to come in. Here's a bunch of paint. We're going to paint whatever we want. We're going to paint whatever we want. And then we had an artist come in and do a relief painting over top. So you can see like that's a local native plant. There's different things that are highlighted, but in behind it is everyone else's contributions. So when people come in here and they're in this space, if they've been here and part of the painting of it, people feel a lot more connected and a part of this space. It does feel like a community space for people, which is what we're trying to do with our covered rec space by inviting people and groups to participate in cleanup, to share their ideas about what they want to do with this space. And that's an ongoing conversation that never stops. The co-creation never stops. And one thing that I've learned to do is just call. I'm just calling people. I'm calling people. I'm hearing what they're doing with the community. And I'm like, hey, do you want to, can we? How can we? Do you want to go in on a grant together? Do you want to, can we? And that generates so much excitement and so much more energy. It gives us rocket fuel to complete projects that we want to do. Still slow, gonna say, it still takes time and it still takes a lot of planning, but having that energy of more people co-creating just extrapolates our capacity to, not extrapolates, it makes it bigger, our capacity to complete and keep the energy going, the long-term energy to create these projects.
Beautiful examples, and it's so powerful to hear in real time the clear ways that you've been able to create space for community members to be a part of projects even from the very early stages. And I think that's so refreshing to hear that there's the co-creation piece has allowed folks to bring in their perspectives, to bring their needs to the forefront and really contribute in a way that's meaningful. So thank you all for those reflections. I see the chat is also popping up with responses as well. I will encourage those participating to feel free to continue sharing your examples or reflections that come up for folks. If there's any ways that folks can stay connected to you all and maybe support in this co-creation process, if you notice that there's folks joining in from the same province or same region or same island, please feel free to continue sharing that in the chat. The next set of questions that came in, we had one come in from BC, Alberta, and Ontario, actually, and they were all around this theme of municipal involvement. So I know each of you sort of touched on the role that policy could play or how government, the role of government possibly supports your work. Are there any approaches that you can share with folks joining this call on how they can get involvement from their municipal government? I summarized that question, the 3 questions into one. So give me a couple minutes to plug it in the chat there. But any approaches that you can share around how folks can get municipal, mostly municipalities or government involved in their projects?
I was really fortunate that the year that Goddard's Free Little Pantry came into being was an election year. So I threw it up on Facebook. This is what's happening. And so we have 5 counselors here, and there was probably about 12 individuals running for those 5 positions. Immediately, immediately 7 or 8 of them reached out to me and we're like, let's have coffee. Let's sit down and chat about this. Because they are interested in learning more about what's happening in the community, and they also wanted to find some things that the community could really connect with, which they could support, which in turn makes them more popular. So immediately I was just booked back to back talking with all of them. But then it was great because then once they were elected, I think 3 or 4 out of the 5 that were elected I had sat down with. So when I then had to write the report to council asking them for permission, they already knew all about it. It was really funny at the time because the mayor was not familiar at all. And it came up on the agenda, and the mayor said to Councillor Trevor, Councillor Trevor, can you tell us a bit about this project? And Trevor said, yes, we must throw our full weight behind it right now. We must approve this. And the mayor was like, "Sir, I don't know what this is. I mean, you need to give me some context." So from my experience, it's just been a very personal level. I've been fortunate to know some of the members through work before I did this because I've checked books out to their kids for years. I've seen them at events and whatnot. So I was very fortunate to already have that personal piece, but just not being afraid to reach out. And even nowadays, I'll shoot one of them an email. I know one of them's super active on Facebook all the time, so I'll message them. Um, I think that a lot of people are afraid to approach their municipalities, but all they can do is say no. You might be really surprised by how much support they will have for you.
Thank you, Avery. So tapping into personal networks, leveraging connections that have been established previously, and then, like you said, just going for it and sending maybe a cold call, having a cold call or sending out an email. Any other thoughts that come up for folks?
Just echoing what Avery said, it's, you know, like in real estate, it used to be location, location, location. I think this is relationship, 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 relationship. And understanding those skills, like it's a skill set. It's a, right? It's a skill set that either we have or we learn to develop in these roles. And if we don't have it and we don't want to develop it, we need to find someone who will do that, who is that person, who is that socially connected person who's willing to do that level of work, because it's work. It's energy. It's significant energy required to bridge constantly, going across that bridge, showing up to their meetings, showing up to the municipal meetings, having someone or yourself or a representative going, hey, I'm from such and such project, and someone who has the capacity to like share the excitement and the why, and who's rooted in the why, who and where and how and all that, so that they can speak on behalf of the project if it's not you personally. Sometimes it's me, and oftentimes it's other people who do a much better job in those high level meetings where they know all of these and the thous and the hitherto and the legal speak. That's not necessarily me, but it's having those people to build those bridges with those other people who have the resources is so critical.
And I just want to add to that, like we always talk about finding that ally within the city and within, you know, whichever institution you're working with. And to add to that, and to the point that I was talking about, collecting feedback from the community, like collecting data, documenting your projects so that there is proof that it's actually working, that there is impact that you're creating. And maybe you don't get the support for this one, but you know, in the next one, you have something to prove, you know, like an evidence to show that this is actually working and we need more support.
So touching on ways that we could bring, as Mickey was saying, like just be our authentic selves, even if we don't have certain language, just bringing who we are and sharing as strongly as we can our experiences and just bringing that to the forefront. And as Jiya was sharing, I think it's so important across all three responses. I'm really hearing taking opportunities to just go for it. What Jiya noted around evaluation, making sure that there is evidence of the amazing work that's taking place. I think so much about our projects and those that shared pictures, videos, live testimonials of what's been told. We also have a portion of our website that's just dedicated to stories that came up from our projects and the communities, really giving folks that are doing the work full advantage to share some of the impact that has taken place and really bring forth a lot of the, I guess like for me, like a lot of the key pieces or a lot of the beauty in the work, really allowing space for that to come to the forefront and allow others to see what's happening. I love that piece. Thank you all. You know, and Eva has shared the stories in the chat. The link is there for you all. Another question that comes up for folks is, how are communities / leaders taking diverse cultural backgrounds into consideration when creating / defining a healthy city or community? And I'll drop that in the chat for us.
Where I am,
Oh.
go for it, Mickey. Okay, she muted herself. Okay. So we do not have a lot of diversity in the Goderich community. It's mostly Caucasian folks. So in terms of diversity on that front, there hasn't been a ton with Goderich Free Little Pantry. But like I said, diversity in sitting down with the unhoused folks, sitting down with the municipal folks. Like I said, just meeting with as many people as we could who we thought could support this project or benefited or just provide us with that much needed information. It was also very beneficial for us to sit down with both of the food banks. They were very, very, very supportive of this project. And again, they some of the staff there, one particular woman has been the head of the food bank for 30 years. The amount of experience she has and the amount of information she was able to tell me from all of her experience was amazing, and something that I would never have been able to conceive on my own, or, it would have taken me another 28 years to get to her level.
Thank you so much, Avery. And I know Mickey had unmuted at one point. Pass it to you, Mickey.
Yeah, much like Avery, we live in a community with not a lot of diversity, mostly Caucasian. The diversity, though, that we do have is very socioeconomic, and personal identity. There's a lot of diverse personal identity across the gender spectrum, across the sexual orientation spectrum, whatever, all that it's a big part of our community. And so having that awareness and things like having a gender neutral bathroom, things like using we're learning. We are learning in our organization how to do this effectively. And the way that we are learning is through feedback from our community. And we haven't necessarily been soliciting it, but it's coming to us. And hey, you guys, you need to look at this. Hey, you guys, what about this? I had this experience. And taking in that feedback and, getting past the initial, what do you mean I'm not, what do you mean I'm stepping on someone's toes? What do you mean I'm not 100% a good person, right? Getting past that, first of all, and getting to the issue of how are we working together for this community? And what is the feedback that I am receiving? And how do we incorporate that into the ways that we work with people and our considerations for what we're building in the different projects that we take on?
You just reminded me too, Mickey, when you said about like the differing gender identities and whatnot. The ages on our executive committee, we have somebody who just graduated high school, and then our accountant is close to 90. And it's been a very interesting because our accountant in particular is like, "What do you mean you cannot do this immediately?" And we're like, "Sir, she's in high school, or I'm working full time and I have to do A, B, and C after work." So it's been really eye-opening, I think, for all of the different ages, how people process things and do things differently. It's been eye-opening and it's been really fun at times.
I wanted to add to the how our communities leaders taking diverse cultural backgrounds into consideration. So we did a project in Caledon, which is near Brampton, so outside Toronto, on engaging the community um, on how we can celebrate different cultures. So I think the town was they wanted to move away from Christmas, as the central, not move away from Christmas, but add other festivals also to celebrate other festivals also. So in the community engagement, there was a lot of feedback from the South Asian community about wanting to celebrate Diwali also in a big way. And I think it was at the same time that it like fireworks during Diwali became a contentious issue, and because it was noise pollution and air pollution and all of that. But then the Caledon came up with the idea of lighting up the night sky with drones. So it was environment friendly, and they actually did it, and they won an award for it also. So that was taking community feedback, considering diverse cultural backgrounds, to creating a healthy city.
Thank you so much to each of you for the transparency in answering that question. I think when we reflect on diversity, it could show up in so many different ways in our communities. And I think myself, and I would say from what I'm seeing in the chat, appreciate the perspectives each of you brought forward to show us, when things were sort of missed, right? What's missing in terms of diversity in our communities, and what are the ways that we've been mindful of it, and what are the ways that we try to pivot or adapt to keep diversity in mind. and also highlighting the strengths. And I think about what Jiya just shared around celebration of Diwali. Me also being in the GTA area, being in Ontario, there is a lot of racial diversity in the communities or the cities that I'm part of. And sometimes it's about getting together to really think through alternatives. And I'm glad to hear Jiya with bringing in the light drones was a good common ground for folks in community to still bring forward the celebration of light. So that's awesome to hear. Looking at the chat, oh, amazing. There's still some links that continue to be shared and some other examples of what's happening in other folks' community. I'll go into our last question from panelists, from the audience. And for any questions that we did not get a chance to, I'm going to encourage all participants to reach out to our amazing panelists beyond this space and follow up. Maybe they could share some contact information, whether that's their website or social media handles, for you to keep in touch and continue to have conversations around the work that's happening. I know on each of your websites already, there's information about projects that are taking place. So I think it would also be a great resource for participants to tap back to. One of the questions that come up, and this will be our last question for the day, is how to create community building and placemaking opportunities with limited resources. And I'll drop that in the chat. And if there's any specific examples on how you were able to do that or how you witnessed that in your community. It was framed resources as far as funding, so limited access to funding. But I'm thinking for this space, maybe we can expand that a bit more to just be limitations around capacity even, or having folks on the team. And again, that was my rewording, so give me a minute to populate it into the chat. But that will be our wrap-up question for today's session. So how can community leaders and placemakers create opportunities with limited resources, small or limited resources?
Hi. We try and make our opportunities fun and engaging across the ages. So opportunities for fundraising, we always try and have an entertainment and a food option. That's really helpful. And one thing that has been working for us, which is a little bit different, is creating space for nothing to happen. Creating some space for rest in the project. What happens, I'm noticing in those places where we're not actively fundraising, where we're not actively pushing the project to completion, is it gives people an opportunity to say, hey, what's up? Or I have an idea, or what are you guys doing? And we get some really great resources and engagement through that. It's not been planned. Like, it's not been like, hey, we're going to take a break now and this is what's going to happen. But really, in our culture, to be driven to succeed and complete and progress and all of that, taking a bit of time to just rest, not only for ourselves personally, but to give the project a bit of breathing room, really has given us openings where we can collaborate with other organizations who then step in with their funding, who then step in with their energy. We're still collaborating, but it's like we kind of take the gas off and we're saving resources in that moment, but we're also opening up opportunities for other people and organizations to engage with us. If that makes sense, that's just what I'm noticing.
Standing out to me is the cross collaboration piece, connecting with folks that are already doing the work or folks that may have a larger structure set or team to tap in and think about how those resources can support the work that's happening. in your community or with your projects. Awesome. Thank you, Mickey.
So the pantries, I'm actually wearing one right now and one of our t-shirts. It sounds kind of silly, but like branding has created so many opportunities for us. We have a very well-known logo at this point, and we did have the ability to offer shirts, sweaters, lanyards with that logo on it, and tote bags. The amount of feedback that we have received, people are promoting for us. Um, because they will wear that shirt to the grocery store and someone will ask them about it, and then suddenly that person will go and buy a few cans and throw it in their local pantry. We're not putting much effort into that. We had to place the shirt order, and the amount of community spread that those little pieces have had has been massive for the pantries. Obviously, you need an initial budget to order those pieces, but you can even do pre-orders. Don't order 50 shirts if you know only 2 people want them. Take those pre-orders and kind of run with that.
I love the green and the branding, Avery. And I agree, Mickey, about when you have limited resources, you prioritize also rest, add it to the plan. But what both of you said, also reminded me of, going back to the asset-based approach, identifying those organizations or those assets that you can collaborate with in the community, so that it's not just your resources. It's a shared effort, shared resources, and after a point they will, after a point they also help with the promotion and with the rallying behind, with the mobilization and everything. So it's not just you doing it. You have that community with you.
And it's great to hear, like, especially in this digital age, how technology, how branding could be a source for folks to get aware of what's taking place without needing to physically meet someone from the team or show up to an event. So I'm glad to hear that common thread has still been pushed through. And overall, I'd like to say, as far as this discussion and the presentation shared throughout today's webinar, it sounds like there's been extremely helpful tips and clear examples that folks are able to reflect on and bring back into their community. I myself, I'm feeling really inspired. So I want to thank you each for showing up today from a place of transparency in terms of the stories that you've shared and the resources, but also from a place that's grounded in knowledge sharing. I think what's been brought forward is things that folks could definitely take with them in multiple capacities, even thinking on some of the clear tools that were shared around how to engage community right from the beginning, how to tap into our youth networks. I'm really excited to see and hear back from those joining how this work could, or how the examples could apply to their work to date. So thank you, Jiya, for bringing the presentation and really opening this space with the foundations of what 80 Cities has identified as healthy communities. Thank you, Mickey, for bringing your perspective from Denman Island and really speaking to the duality that takes place in that community. And I want to thank you, Avery, for really speaking to how food could be a source for bringing folks together without physically having to interact with anybody. And I think thinking about our next steps and what could happen beyond this call, I encourage everybody joining as participants to continue to take this information and share back with us at Healthy Communities. We would love to know how this information has resonated with you all. We did share the link to a survey in the chat, so that would be an opportunity to share any highlights or any reflections that have come up for you. But we will also leave our email. I'll plug it in a second. If there's any specific questions or any feedback that you would like to connect further around, please feel free to drop it there. Before we wrap up today's call, I did want to hold space for Patricia, who is our graphic reporter, to hop on for a couple minutes and just share some of the highlights that have come up through the graphic. Let me spotlight Patricia here.
Thank you. What a rich conversation. I loved how everything was there were like real human experience stories here. That's what I really wanted to capture. And the connection, the collective effort, the working together and sharing joy. I see a lot of joy in this image. And I also see a lot of commitment over time came up so often in this. And it's really very inspiring, I think, all the way around. And I think it all really highlights that this is a process, and that healthy community is a process and not an outcome. I think that really was shown over and over again.
Wonderfully put and so beautifully captured, Patricia.
Thank
you. Thank you. And for everyone joining in, if you love the conversation, if you love the type of topics and resources that have been shared in today's webinar, then you would probably love our upcoming sessions as well. Next month, we will be doing a session all around placemaking and plazas. As well, we have an array of small conversations where we pull in community members, placemakers, and this takes place through a series of community conversations. Eva has dropped the full link to these small group discussions in the chat for you all. If you're interested in registering for one of them, we hold space for about 10 to 15 folks to come together over shared topics of interest to just have an open dialogue around pieces that are taking place in their communities, an opportunity for folks to share any resources that are coming up. And then our next mobilizer, I'll drop the link here, is all about urban plazas, and that will be facilitated by Belleville Placemaking. So on behalf of HCI, I want to thank our amazing speakers for joining us today. I want to give another warm thank you to Patricia, along with Adrian and Louis, who are on the French interpretation channel. It's wonderful to be able to hold space where we could all speak authentically and openly about what is happening in our communities and still be able to really pull together those interconnected webs, as Patricia has beautifully displayed, and show how what's happening in one region can support or be a spark of inspiration for other communities, both large and small. So thank you so much, everybody. You're so welcome. I see your thank yous in the chat, and we look forward to holding space with you all again. Take care.